One, thank you for coming to our Board of Supervisors special meeting. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order for November 26, 2019. As usual, we will start our meeting with an invocation, and I believe it will be led by Ms. Lascolette.
Okay, thank you. If you please stand if you are able. Okay. Most gracious God, thank you for enabling us to gather here today. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve this great county. Now, as we go about doing the business set forth today, help us to keep you first in everything that we say and do. Bless all of us with the proper knowledge, wisdom, and understanding so that we may all prosper. Most of all, bind us together in spirit of love, which surpasses all things. It is in your most holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Now let's do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on our agenda is the citizen comment period. I see that Mr. Lyle's already standing. Please state your name and address, even though we know yours, and keep your comments to about 3 minutes.
John Lyle, 1521 Manatee, Annika Road, Manatee, South Virginia. I am one of the Monica Soil and Water Conservation District directors, and I want to just give you a brief update that our staff has indicated that a request from county staff for budget has been made, and we have submitted our preliminary request, which will be budget level revenue support. But I want to amplify on that is potentially a placeholder that the Commonwealth has provided additional cost share funding, which is significantly above what we've seen in previous years. And with that increase comes additional support from the Commonwealth. So I am expressing the opinion of my other directors that we should ask for what we need. And so, Mr. Podesky, if you in the budgeting process to be aware that it may indeed be level request, because we're still working through what we are going to need to do our mission. But I do look at Mr. Stady as actually aspirational, that he came and requested less money and did more.
That's right.
And I would like to one up him if all possible. But he and I can have pretty good competition. But I have 5 other directors that we need to appreciate what I have as a current thought process. So much for our budget request. We put a preliminary in, and I'm asking that it be viewed as a placeholder that we may come back if I can make the case that we need this level of support from the county, which may not be what we requested. We do have our state conference coming up December 8th, 9th, and 10th. We have a legislative packet in front of the members of the General Assembly. We're going to ask them to approve and they go into session. Some of that does include level funding or full funding for our operation. And that's where county money has come into play, where you have given us support to help keep us operational, because we have been approximately 60% funded from the Commonwealth, what we need just to take care of staff, rent, and internal operations. We'll see how that goes. One of the requests we're making, though, is increased cost share for septic cost share. So individual residents in the county, if that is provided, would be able to participate in meeting county TMDL benchmarks through a cost share septic pump out program. So more will be revealed. We'll find out what comes out of the General Assembly, because that's where that kind of assistance and cooperative can come from. And then the very last thing I'll mention is there is some move afoot to provide billing rule opportunities for counties to tax plastic bags. And 1% of a 5-cent tax would go to the county, and 4 cents would go to the Chesapeake Bay fund. And it would be done based on those counties within the Chesapeake Bay watershed, which is one of them. There's going to be a different cohort of senators and delegates down sees one and wants to claim a bounty for the Christmas mother, I'm paying $10 a pop.
I got a bunch of extra signs in my basement. I'll start putting them out.
I've got a couple, I've got a couple in my garage. Congratulations, Goochland mother.
And I am serious because I think I've caught most of them, but if there are some out there, pay that back.
Thank you, Mr. Lyle. Anyone else? Is it light green? Oh, can you push the center? Oh, no?
Testing.
Yep.
Okay. I didn't think you wanted to hear me talk then. Okay. Linda Moore, 2164 Robert. Now I got a green. Okay. As you know, or may not know, November is Diabetic Awareness Month, and I'm a card-carrying member, type 1 of a kind. Unfortunately, being a type 1 diabetic, I am an unintended consequence to my insurance company. But I'm learning that more and more, everybody in America is an unintended consequence to the laws that are passed. Many, many years ago, when I used to go down to the General Assembly, Frank Codgrove used to caution me that when I asked for laws to be passed, to remember about the unintended consequences of these laws that get passed, that unintended consequences can really hurt families and people. And I'm afraid that we're going to be looking at some unintended consequences very, very soon of our decisions that we're going to be making soon on zoning ordinances. And I just, we have met with Mr. Gazer, and we have circulated our letter in hoping that you will look at what we feel are unintended consequences. We know that everybody has to suffer unintended consequences, but one thing, knowing what they are, and another thing is getting surprised by them. So thank you very much for all you do at looking at all those unintended consequences. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment period. I didn't have anything on my comments. I would like to ask for a motion. There's an item on our December 3rd agenda. It's a public hearing for through truck restriction for Davis Mill Road. We are looking to try to get more information on that item. And so we would like to defer it to sometime later. And if I could have a motion to defer it, we could go ahead and, I think we still need to mention it at the meeting, but we can get it off our agenda for the 3rd.
Do we have a date to defer to, Mr.
90 days.
90 days? 90 days to give us enough time for research.
So the motion would be to defer it to your regular March meeting date. Is March
Yes.
90?
March, is March good enough?
Use March rather than a specific number of days if you're
Right,
okay with that.
it would be to the
March.
March regular
Okay.
meeting date.
You want a motion?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move that we defer the resolution to make a portion of Davis Mill Road restricted to through truck traffic until our regular March 2020 meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. And I'm not trying to get this off my plate. may do that with some of the others. Okay. Mr. Budeski?
Thank you,
your
Mr.
comments?
Mr. Chairman, just briefly, just remind everybody, on December 6th at 6:30 at Napa Field, we will be having the annual tree lighting. It's always a good event, and Fire and Rescue gives St. Nick a lift to the event there that evening, and so it's always a great family fun event, partnerships with our YMCA, our library, Parks and Rec and General Services support, and have a lot of great folks there for turnout. So if everyone is able to join, we encourage it. Today, right before this meeting, we had the pleasure to see a new ambulance that's going into service, the chief's vehicle and 2 ALS vehicles for support of our residents. Really thank the board for the support to be able to put these additional important vehicles into service. They're a great asset not only to the providers providing service, but directly to our residents. And so thank you for the opportunity to come out. We have quite a full meeting coming up next week. We were considering bringing them out, but we may not have had enough parking. So, and so thank you for the opportunity to indulge us. I do just want to remind folks, before the numbers of meetings next week, at 2 o'clock, we will actually celebrate the service of Mr. Minnick, Mr. Alvarez, our sheriff, our major, and others at the Sheriff's Department at 2 o'clock, 2 to 3 in this room here next week. But prior to that, at 12:30, we are going to be kicking off an agricultural initiative that many are aware that Mr. Lau just came up and talked about the Monica and Soil and Water offices. We've co-located our extension. That is just a strategy amongst a continuum of services we're looking to do for our agricultural community. At 12:30 at Central High on the 3rd. We'll be having a brief announcement regarding that initiative, as well as an opportunity to tour the Ag Center there and the blacksmith space that just went under lease. You'll have an opportunity to poke in there while we're out there as well. And so those are all open to the public, and I encourage participation in that, and just the beginning of much more to come as it relates to supporting our ag community. So with that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Budeski. The next item on our agenda is new business and the presentation of the fiscal year 2019 comprehensive annual financial report.
Chairman Alvarez, members of the board, good afternoon. Thank you for giving me just a few minutes here to summarize the audit report and findings. We did meet at 1:30 with the Audit and Finance Committee and went through this in a little more detail than I probably will here today. But the important things to note are with your financial statements, you have unmodified or clean opinions on the financial statements themselves. You also received clean opinions on internal control and compliance, as well as the federal dollars that you spend. It's second year in a row, I believe, with no findings, so that you became a low-risk auditee when it comes to the federal awards. So all of those are wonderful opinions, and we're happy and glad to be able to do that. So we had no findings there that material weaknesses, significant efficiencies, things of that nature that we thought we needed to put in those financial statements. We also talked a little bit about the management letter that was issued that has some suggestions and things of that nature for suggested improvements, some different areas that we can look at within our IT systems and IS, and things of that nature. And of course, some of the new GASBs that are on the horizon that we'll have to deal with over the next couple of years. I don't have much else prepared to say. I just wanted to say that, Mr. Alvarez, it's been great to work with you with the Finance and Audit Committee. I know there's a couple of you are leaving, but I certainly got a chance to work with you one-on-one in those meetings, and enjoyed that time, and certainly appreciated the questions and the comments that you always had for us during those last few years. So I wanted to bring it up and say thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garber. And it's likewise, I think you guys have been a great partner and have really dug into our operation and made some great recommendations, even now that we're clean.
Sure.
So that's really great. Appreciate it.
Sometimes you just got to keep peeling that onion back a little
Yeah.
bit and a little bit, and gives you a chance to dive a little deeper sometimes. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Questions for Mr. Garber?
Do not.
Mr.
Just thank you.
No?
I will note so Mr. Peterson feels good about this, as we also discussed in that meeting of our local government clients, Goochland will be the only one that has met in November, and will have everything onto the state by the deadline of the 30th, and have had your board meeting to accept those financial statements. So congratulations to the staff and how hard they've worked to do that, and of course having the meetings today and being able to make sure we got that accomplished.
Thank you. Thank you for adding that. Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is the 2020 first quarter general fund projection. Ms. Horlacher?
Good afternoon. I'm Barbara Horlacher, Director of Finance. There is no action required today. I am presenting per our policy our first quarter results. As Mr. Garber mentioned, we met earlier in the Finance and Audit Committee and discussed these results. It's early in the year, but at this point in the year, revenues are estimated to exceed the budget by approximately $2 million, primarily due to higher than budgeted real estate and personal property tax collections. Overall, revenues are projected to exceed operating expenditures by about $3.4 million. So at this point in the year, we're saying we're going to have an operating surplus of approximately $3.4 million. And of course, as the year goes, we can refine those projections much more closely. Transfers out to other funds are estimated to be about $6.4 million, and that is predominantly money that we are investing in our capital side of things. And second quarter results will be presented in February of 2020, not 2019 as it says on the item. So are there any questions on the first quarter projections?
Questions for Ms. Horlacher? No.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Horlacher. And I do want to state before we move off this topic and into the bonds, that clean audits and surpluses don't happen by chance. It takes a lot of work from a lot of employees to make sure that we follow our fiduciary policies. And so thanks to all employees for doing their job so well.
Thank you. And it is really a tribute to all the county. The cooperation I get for the finance department is amazing. Usually, finance is the last folks that people want to hear from, but here they're very, very cooperative. So.
And Mr. Chair and Mr. Badesky, just to confirm, to send the CAFR forward to the state, does that require any action by this board, or is that?
No, the formal action
It's
is your meeting for the review.
There's also
Okay.
some paperwork to sign, which,
We have a letter
I have
that has
a
to be
letter to sign.
notarized
right.
to go
Right.
along.
Okay, so we have what we need to go ahead and release the CAFR and send it forward to the state.
Yes, sir.
Okay, super, just want to confirm.
And
Thank
we
you.
have 4 days.
We're doing it early. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next item is the authorization of issuance of bond for the Tuckahoe Creek Service District. Ms. Horlacher.
Okay. We discussed this as well in the Finance and Audit Committee earlier. What you have before you is a resolution to approve partial refunding of the 2012 TCSD bonds. As this board well knows, the original infrastructure of the TCSD was financed with the 2002 bonds. They are what we call revenue bonds, backed by the revenue of the district. Then in 2012, you had an opportunity to refinance a portion of those. Those became the 2012 bonds. You still had some 2002 bonds left. And because of favorable interest rates, favorable market conditions, we may be in a position to refinance some of those 2012 bonds. The 2002 bonds that remain were never refinanced because they weren't callable, weren't able to be refinanced, and they will be able to be called in 2022. VRA contacted us in September, and then we worked with our financial advisors, PFM, to say, yes, things are good. They were better in September. Interest rates have ticked up a little, so things aren't quite as good right now. but let's wait and see what happens in January with interest rates. And then if market conditions are still favorable and all the conditions are met that are in this resolution, the most important one being that we would not refinance unless we had net present value debt service savings of 3%. Of course, to refinance, there's always costs involved, so you don't want to do that unless you're really going to see some significant savings. Otherwise, the costs to refinance outweigh your savings, and you haven't done any good for the county. So this resolution would allow us to pursue refinancing with VRA in one of two ways. Either as standalone debt, which is what we currently have, or through their pooled debt, which would be a spring pool in the May timeframe. VRA will most undoubtedly want to see a resolution specific to their structure of financing. This resolution is written so that you are aware that we could go one of two ways and that you can show the intent and interest in refinancing. But VRA would say, okay, that's great, County of Goochland, but let's rewrite that resolution so we can bring it back to the board and specifically put the terms in of that piece of debt that, so it's all very exciting for the Tuckahoe Creek Service District. We are looking at all kinds of options for the debt. Again, like I said, if interest rates don't work out, we may instead wait until 2022 and call some of those bonds, but all very positive things at this point. So do you have any questions? The Finance and Audit Committee did recommend that you approve this resolution, but if you have any questions on the resolution, we can discuss those.
Questions for Ms. Horlacher? Would you like to add any additional clarification for the public?
No, I mean, I think Ms. Horlacher did an excellent job. It's just, I guess, we're able to even consider this because the refinanced bonds that we did in 2012 are callable, whereas the original ones done in 2002 were not. This this opens the door for us to be able to consider taking advantage of favorable market conditions to the extent they emerge. And I guess it's just important to note that this is not bonds that would be general obligation bonds backed by the full faith and credit of the county. These are really revenue bonds specific to the TCSD. And if the opportunity is there to refinance, that we'd take advantage of that. It's also important to note in here that there is some guidelines. You mentioned some of them. There's at least 4 different parameters that would need to be met.
Right.
And that if there is an opportunity to take advantage of that does meet all of those, that it would come back to this board with a specific proposal for refinancing that would meet all of those, that would action would then need to be taken by this board to say, yes, we approve that specific refinance activity. So
Right.
Is that correct characterization of this?
That is very correct. And there's even a third option where we would most definitely have to come back. We would have to have another resolution for if we were to issue that debt on our own without the assistance of VRA.
Right.
So.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Lumpkins?
Maybe Mr. Peterson can just help me understand. Are we, I'm trying to see the defined terms in here. Are we trying to move, am I picking up correctly that we're trying to move away from what we've called county bonds to county refunding bonds? Is that addition of the word refunding significant to this movement?
Well, I'm not familiar with the exact, but I think there's 2 different ways we could go here. One is a standalone, one's a pool. And I think they've given separate defined terms for the county bonds that would be issued to accomplish either the standalone or the pooled activity.
I'll read
Okay.
real quickly. Just it says, whereas the board's desire is to position the county such that it may take advantage of favorable market conditions to realize debt service savings through the refunding, redemption, defeasance, or cancellation of the 2012 county bonds in whole or in part, by authorizing and improving the issuance of either 2020 county refunding bonds or 2020 county local bonds. So I was just trying, the difference in phrasing, is that a difference in a type of bond that we're?
Yeah, those terms are defined above, and if we're refinancing, then we're staying within the separate pool. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. We're staying within the separate account, if you will, as opposed to a pooled account where they're blending with other county. If we do it within and stay standalone, then it would be a refinancing. If we do it within a pool, then they've given that a separate definition of terms called local bonds, I think it is, local bonds.
So the pool is the local bonds?
Yeah, and again, that's defined above. I'd have to go back and read the paragraph above that, but that's where it's defined.
Yes, they're trying to distinguish between the two methods of
Yeah.
issuing bonds, whether it's standalone
Or pool.
Or pooled, yes.
Maybe I can point you to where it's defined here.
And that would be defined by the time we came back to you again, whether we were going to go standalone or through the pool.
And the standalone versus a pool, that doesn't have anything, like he said a moment ago, that doesn't have anything to do with like general obligations. These are still
Correct,
service
correct. These
district
will
type.
still, VRA only really deals in revenue bonds. They are built,
So both of these, pooled or standalone, are all under the bucket of revenue bonds.
correct, correct. And that means you pledge the revenue of the district to them as opposed to, as somebody mentioned, the full faith and credit of the county, as in a general obligation bond.
Does the pooled versus standalone have to do with how the bonds get placed into the market? Is that the idea?
Yeah,
Exactly.
and by the way, I did just look back, and it is defined terms above, and it is consistent with what I mentioned. There's several reasons why they might pool the issuance. One is if the amount that you want to borrow is a very small amount and not enough to get market participants' attention. So if you're going to go issue $10,000 worth of bonds, nobody's really going to pay attention, or at least you won't get very good pricing. But if they can take a large number of counties with small amounts and pool them, then you issue $100 million worth of bonds, you get much better pricing, much better activity, much better liquidity in the secondary market. That's one reason they might. Another might be if a county is not rated and had to go out directly on its own, it might get unfavorable pricing. If they go through the VRA and get the implied credit from the state, then they get
Exactly.
much, much better pricing. So either kind of an implied rating upgrade or just amalgamating small
Or
pieces into a
size.
size. Those would be two of the reasons why you might go through a pool. Our initial bonds in '02 was large enough to stand alone and still get investor interest, and went through VRA because we were non-rated county, or the TCSD bonds were
So back in
non-rated,
2002, they did it
So-
they went the VRA route for the rating.
as opposed to for the size. But it could have also been the size. I mean, 60 million is kind of a crossover level, but it worked out better that way. Now, if the county, now that we have AAA credit rating, if we go out in size, the door might be open at some point for us to consider going out directly. But for purposes of this refunding, VRA has come to us and said, we think we see an opportunity. We're going to bring a number of our portfolio counties along. Do you guys want to join in or not? And that's,
Right.
is that where we are, Barbara?
Yes, and that's correct. And
Okay.
they do those pools twice a year, and they're a combination of new debt for various counties, for the reasons Mr. Peterson said, or they're,
Retirement of existing
Right.
debt, yeah.
right.
Cool. Okay. Well, what I'm picking up from this is still very it's very flexibly written is
Exactly.
the upshot
Exactly.
of this. So,
But that before they pull the trigger, they'd come back.
well, and there's criteria, there are good criteria here that, and I think I was looking for it when I was reading this. We're not going to extend, is it in the criteria that we're not going to extend the term?
Correct.
Oh, yeah, final maturity will know December 30th, 2041. And that's pretty close to where we are now?
That's where we are now, yes.
That's exactly where we are now,
Yes.
okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Horlacher. Any other items to come before the board this afternoon?
Do we need to vote on this?
Are you going to
Oh,
vote on that
we do.
resolution?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I was trying to set the record for shortest meeting, but that's over. Do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the resolution as presented.
Second,
We have a motion and we have a second. Mr. Budeski, would you do a roll call vote?
Mr. Minnick,
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez,
Yes.
Ms. Lachelette,
Yes.
Mr. Lumpkins,
yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
So now, seeing no new business coming before the board, I would like to adjourn our meeting as follows. Tuesday, December 3rd at 12:30 p.m., we will meet, everybody's invited to attend the ribbon cutting and open house tour of the new agricultural center at Central High School at 2748 Dogtown Road. That same day at 2 p.m., there will be a farewell gathering here in this room. On December 3rd at 3 p.m., our regular business meeting, and at 7 p.m., our public hearings. Those meetings will probably be crowded, so come early and grab a chair. Then Friday, December 20th, this may be moved, right? I think you said? The courthouse.
Correct. The swearing in is still
So
scheduled.
we will have the swearing in investiture ceremony for the new, or for all the elected officials at 2 p.m. in the circuit court room. The ribbon cutting for the security building may be postponed due to conflicts with the courts. And then the next meeting will be January 7th at 3 p.m. for the regular business meeting and 7 p.m. for the public hearings. With that, I'll adjourn our meeting.
Thank you.
No, I think Bob has that. I think it was
Not
like
quite.
15.